I heard a story recently that stuck with me. A couple was out celebrating something incredibly important. And I had to ask this couple if I could share this story with them because I saw two learning moments in one story. And in the middle of their night, they were out celebrating something important in their relationship. But something happened in the middle of that date night where an old contact from years ago started texting. At first, like the person gave no names. There was no clarity in the conversation. It was just strictly straight games. And the person receiving the messages started responding. Not because that they were interested in the person, but because their anxiety started to kick in. At first it was like, who is this? Why are they watching me? And what is going on? And instead of laying a boundary and shutting it down immediately, kept engaging. And that's where the first lesson is. The past doesn't always come back as temptation. Sometimes it comes back as curiosity. Sometimes it may come back as insecurity. Sometimes it may come back disguised as confusion. But if you entertain it, even unintentionally, you create tension in the present moment. Now, here's where it starts to get a little bit deeper into the story that he was telling me. The way that he responded was incredibly sharp. I believe he said after a couple of drinks and everything, he said, most mature women wouldn't fall for that, and they wouldn't keep entertaining a game from someone hiding who their name is. And the premise around those words was not wrong, but how he delivered it was. Because all he did in that moment was make her feel immature or ashamed of herself and any other thing else. And that right there is where a lot of most men start to fail. See, a man has a superpower, and that superpower is his words. They carry a lot of weight. They can either cut through tension with a knife and start to damage your relationship, or they can help diffuse, certain situations. So he could be right in theory with, how he was feeling and trying to say those things, but the way he delivered it was incorrect. Two wrongs don't make a right. But to not have enough regulation to deliver that correctly is incorrect, because if you're trying to build something real, you have to be willing to regulate both aspects of it. And here's the bigger truth. When you're building a future with somebody, you also don't entertain the past. Not because you're scared, but because you're disciplined, you're more mature, you're more focused on your future and where you're going with this. And if you're with someone who's trying to build with you, you also don't walk away at the first mistake. You help teach each other, you help regulate each other, you help articulate what you're truly feeling and what's going on, and you learn to grow together. That's what healthy relationships actually looks like. It's not perfection, it's real-time correction. There's something else that a lot of people don't also talk about, because you're not dealing with a level of immaturity. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you may be dealing with a level of inexperience in a healthy relationship. There are women who have never had a disciplined man in their life. They never had a man who didn't need, them to carry everything. They've never had a man that actually didn't need a woman by their side. And that takes them out of their own realm. Because sometimes they're used to surviving. Sometimes they're used to being the over-functioning one in a relationship. Sometimes they're used to being the strong one that can carry all the weight. And so when they start to step into something that's healthy, it feels incredibly unfamiliar to them. And unfamiliar can start to look like hesitation. At first, it can start to look like anxiety. It can look like not knowing how to respond the right way or the correct way. And that doesn't automatically mean that she's not willing to build with you. It might mean that, maybe they've never been shown how to. And this is where men need discernment. Is she resisting growth? Or did she genuinely not know how to lay strong, firm boundaries and is learning something new? And this is something that I had to explain when I was hearing this story. Was she actually entertaining that level of chaos because she was actually kind of craving it? Or was she truly unaware of how the past slowly starts to creep back in? Is she also leaving every decision and every problem for you to solve on your own? Or are both of you actively working towards the solution together? Because there's a big difference. Women need discernment too. Are you anxious because you want a piece of the past? Are you craving that level of the past? Or because you've never had a man who calmly sets boundaries and doesn't need you to carry that weight? Is he also setting unrealistic boundaries to control everything? Or is he trying to protect something that he actually values? Can he articulate himself on why something is upsetting him? Or is he shutting down and throwing tantrums when things don't go his way? Can he adjust and make accommodations? Or is he instantly shutting everything down and refusing to work towards a solution? Healthy relationships feel unfamiliar to people who are used to survival. Growth feels uncomfortable when you've been independent for way too long. So before you walk away, you should ask yourself these things. Are we both learning something in this moment? Are we both adjusting to what's going on? Are we both trying to build something neither of has ever experienced before? Because if that answer is yes, then you stay and you keep building. If the answer is no, then yes, walk. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. And here's how you know if something is real. When this couple was telling me the story, they also told me that the next day, they weren't sitting there still trying to defend each other. They had apologized, they had talked about everything, and it seemed like a very pure, honest conversation. And what both of them had told me in that moment was, no one can go back and rewrite history. And I confirmed that that was true. You can't go back and change yesterday's mistakes. No one can. But if two people are willing to correct it and step into the future, that's how you know that you have something to work with. It's not perfect, but it's that choice to be willingly. That past will always test your relationships, but it will also test you. And I've learned the hard way what happens when you don't walk away with integrity. Sometimes you may stay too long. Sometimes you start to let that resentment build inside of you. Sometimes you start to handle things in ways that you're not proud of. And that's not strength, that's just your pain trying to speak without any kind of guidance. If I could speak to that version of myself back then, I would tell him it's okay, that I know it hurts. I know that it doesn't feel fear. And I know that you're trying to express yourself, but it isn't worth hurting someone else just to learn that lesson. You have to be willing to walk away clean. Choose your integrity. Listen to the voice that tells you to regulate yourself instead of react. Because growth isn't about being perfect. It's about refusing to repeat the things that have broken you. Discernment will tell you who to build with. Having a level of regulation will determine whether that survives or not. And that level of integrity determines who you become in the process. If this message resonated with you, that means that you are ready to build differently in your life. Not perfectly, but just differently. This is what Spill the Tea is about. Real conversations, real growth, real accountability. If you're a man trying to regulate instead of react, or if you're a woman trying to discern instead of just assume, you're in the right place. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep building this community of disciplined, more self-aware people who refuse to repeat old patterns. If you want to go deeper, my book called A Child Called Home is available now. The links are in the description. If you're also ready to start doing the work yourself, make sure you grab that guide, Found It at the Right Time. It's on Gumroad. The link is in the description as well. If you want a one-stop shop that has all these hubs, It has, you know, the YouTube, my TikTok, the book, and the Gumroad link. You can check out the link mainlegacy.com below. That's where you will find everything. And again, we're not avoiding the work. We're completing the internal part of it. And now we are integrating it into life. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye.